When it comes to the black vote, and that is showing up in the numbers here. Okay, and Mr. Harry Enton is going to go over these numbers because if these numbers hold up, this is not good news for Democrats headed into the midterms in 2028. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now in the numbers is President Trump and the Republican Party are chipping away at the long-term advantage that Democrats have had with black voters, with African Americans. You can see it right here. Look, Trump's approval among African Americans at this point in term one, he was at 12%. You know, he's been losing ground with a lot of people. He's gaining ground with African Americans. He's up to 16% at this point. And you say, this isn't that big of a shift. But I will tell you, Republicans absolutely love this shift that's going on because Democrats have had such a long-term advantage. The fact that he's actually gaining ground versus where he was in term number one, this has major implications for elections down the line because Democrats, especially in a lot of these tight races, you talk about places like Georgia, right down in the South, you see this type of movement for Trump actually gaining ground. This could have major ramifications and help put Republicans over the top in a number of southern places in the midterm elections.
Yeah, especially in southern states that are currently redrawing their maps. Right? They're getting rid of these so-called black districts after the Supreme Court decided to take a sledgehammer to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which again allowed these racialized districts, which is kind of crazy to me. It really blows my mind that, you know, liberals are really arguing for racialized districts, but yet they're claiming that they're fighting against racism by supporting racism. Anyways, because of what the Supreme Court did, now the GOP gets to redraw their maps. And if these type of voting patterns hold up, that helps Republicans when it comes to the margins. Because when they start dividing up these black districts, if black people aren't voting for Democrat at the same clip, even if, you know, is marginally less than they do historically, that goes a long way when it comes to actually winning an election, right? In a newly drawn district where you have these black voters who have been broken up because we're not drawing racial districts anymore, right? So this is why Harry Enton is sounding the alarm here because, yeah, this is kind of a big deal. When you talk about, again, the margins, right, which is what really matters in these races, it may not seem like a lot. It's like, oh, well, Trump went from 12% to 16%, right? But that 4%, it matters in some of these really close races. It's particularly in the South, in these districts that are going to be redrawn by Republicans.
Do you see this as part of a bigger trend?
I see this as absolutely part of a bigger trend. Donald Trump's Republican Party is absolutely gaining ground, not just him gaining in terms of his approval rating, but look at the party ID margin, Kate, because this to me was absolutely stunning. Look at this party ID margin among African Americans. At this point in Trump term number one, Democrats had a 63-point advantage. That is absolutely fallen. Look at where it is now. A double-digit shift away. Democrats, of course, still have the advantage, but it's a 12-point shift to the Republican Party. And I look back through Gallup's records. They sent me their records. And this, in fact, lead that Democrats have is actually smaller than any lead from 2006 to 2021. So Democrats are leading. But again, we're talking about chipping away. Republicans are chipping away at this long-term advantage that Democrats have had among African Americans. We see it in terms of Trump's approval rating, and we even see it to a wider degree among the party ID margin, where all of a sudden there are a number of African Americans who are walking away from the Democratic Party and a number of them who are walking into the Republican tent.
Yeah. So this data point is even more important and more devastating for Democrats because, as I outlined at the beginning of this video, and as I outline all the time when analyzing this stuff, Republicans don't need black people to vote Republican, right, to win. Republicans have been winning without black people since the civil rights era, okay? So they don't need black people to win. They just need black people not to vote for Democrats. So more so than anything, what really benefits Republicans is not necessarily black people supporting them a little bit more, right? Or supporting Trump by 4 points more, right? Going from 12% to 16%, that, you know, that that is fine, right? It helps, but the real number to pay attention to is the fact that you have less black people identifying as Democrats than they have in a long, long, long time, because that means that they're not enthusiastic about voting Democrat, which means that less of them are going to vote Democrat. Doesn't mean they're going to vote Republican, but if they sit out, then that's basically like a vote for Republicans, right? So this data point is even more devastating, okay? And it is a big deal because, again, it shows that Democrats are not popular. They're only hanging on because of Trump derangement, right? I mean, it really makes me wonder, like, where would the Democrat Party be without Trump, right? If Trump didn't exist, I think the Democrat Party would be defeated, to be honest with you. I don't think they'd have a chance. I really think that hatred of Trump, and you got to admit, a lot of people hate Trump, right? For reasons that are unjustified, in my opinion, for the most part, but still, they do hate Trump. I think that hatred is the only thing keeping Democrats alive because they're losing support from core constituencies, right? Like, this is a huge drop-off in black people who are on board with Democrats, right? The agenda, explicitly on board with them.
That is very interesting, looking at that past Gallup information.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the race for control in Congress?
Okay, so you see this right here. You see this 51-point advantage that Democrats have, significantly less than you see that 63-point advantage. And what we will note was back in 2024, right, Donald Trump put in a historically strong performance among African Americans. Democrats performed the worst in a generation. Have they gained any of that coalition back from where they fell down to in 2024? But take a look here. Okay. Choice for election among African Americans. Kamala Harris was leading amongst that group in the pre-election polling by 63 points. Are Democrats gaining back any of that ground? It's a 62-point advantage now. Republicans are holding on to the gains that they made among African Americans in 2024. Republicans are gaining among African Americans. They are chipping away at that long-term advantage. The Donald Trump-led Republican Party is making gains among African Americans that we simply put have not seen the Republican Party make in a generation.
Fascinating. Good to see you here. Thanks
Nice
so
to
much.
see
Yeah, it is fascinating, especially because they claim that Trump is a racist, right? Trump is trying to bring back Jim Crow. He's taking away black people's rights, right to vote. That he's so terrible for black people, but yet he's the most popular Republican amongst black people that we've had in a long, long, long time. It's just pretty funny how that works. Regardless, this is not good news for Democrats. It's a small data point, but it's a data point that matters when you talk about the margins, when you talk about what happens after these states are redistricted out in the South, right, in favor of Republicans, to the advantage of Republicans. It certainly matters, right? Because all we got to do is just keep the House. Okay, if we win by 1 or 2, don't matter. We need to keep the House. And I personally believe that the midterms are going to be a lot closer than what the media is currently predicting, because, again, Democrats are not very popular. I just think that what it's going to take is for things to kind of calm down, right? I think if Trump can get this Iran situation under wraps, gas prices goes back down, if there are less headwinds, right, then I think that the midterms are salvageable, right? I don't believe that we are in panic mode yet, right? But the closer that we get to the midterms, I mean, we'll see, we'll know. There's still a little bit of time left. Regardless, the thing that Democrats should be concerned about is the fact that nobody likes them, right? And if all of a sudden people stop hating Trump for whatever reason, that's going to be a problem for them. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.
Let's get right to Aisha Hasni, who has all the details from that face-to-face. Aisha.
Hey, Todd and Carly, good morning to you. And we just got a readout from the White House on this big bilateral meeting between the two presidents. So I'll read a couple of notes that I've taken away from this statement. They talked about expanding market access for American businesses into China. Remember, the president brought this delegation of 16 CEOs from different business and tech backgrounds. They also talked about wanting more progress on stopping the flow of fentanyl. That's something the president brought up. Now, the Chinese purchases of American agricultural products was also something that was brought up in these discussions. And President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to reduce China's dependence on the strait in the future. That's a really big takeaway. So we're going to focus on that as well. Also, both countries agree that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. And after reading through this readout, there was really nothing in there that said that China was going to help pressure Iran in any way to ending the conflict. We were wondering if that was going to come up. It has been an incredibly busy day for the president, touring around all over Beijing. The president began his day with a visit to the Great Hall of People at the heart of the city, where he was greeted by President Xi. The delegation heard the national anthem along with a 21-gun salute, and the two leaders then had a bilateral meeting, and the president commented on his relationship with Xi. Watch.
You and I have known each other now for a long time. In fact, the longest relationship of our two countries that any president and president has had, and that's to me an honor. We've had a fantastic relationship. We've gotten along. When there were difficulties, we worked it out. I would call you and you would call me, and whenever we had a problem, people don't know, whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly. We're going to have a fantastic future together.
So once the bilateral was over, we actually got several statements from the Chinese side almost immediately. This is a not so thinly veiled warning from the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokeswoman on Taiwan, the issue of Taiwan, which, by the way, gets a ton of its defense weapons from the U.S. This is what she wrote. President Xi stressed to President Trump that the Taiwan question is the most important issue in China-U.S. relations. If it is handled properly, the bilateral relationship will enjoy overall stability. Now, here's the moment a reporter shouts a question at the two leaders about Taiwan, and watch what happens next.
How were your talks, sir?
It's great.
Did you talk about Taiwan?
Great place. Incredible. China's beautiful.
Yeah, neither wanted to say anything about it. Meanwhile, Iran looming in the background as a report overnight indicates that Iran may have taken a vessel near the Strait of Hormuz. While President Trump says he does not need Xi's help in ending the conflict, administration officials did go into this bilat saying that they were hoping to see China play a role, considering that it buys the largest amount of Iranian crude.
We've made the argument to the Chinese, and I hope it's compelling. The Chinese have ships stuck in the Persian Gulf because setting up a system that says we're going to let certain ships through but others not, it's easier said than done. It's a huge source of instability. It threatens to destabilize Asia more than any other part of the world. It's in their interest to resolve this. We hope to convince them to play a more active role.
And remember, there were a huge contingency of CEOs that were present at the ceremony today. We saw them leaving the bilateral early, meaning that the president did what he said. He was going to make his first ask to Xi to open up China to these companies. Of course, the guys, they want to do business in China as long as it's safe to do business in China. The state banquet is up next, and then the first interview with Sean Hannity airs later tonight. We will find out much more directly from the president on what he got out of President Xi today.
Yeah, which
Back
will
to you.
certainly be something to watch, and a great wrap-up, Aisha, of what's taking place so far. Notable and very interesting to hear what is coming out of China with a heavy emphasis on Taiwan, and the United States focusing, of course, on the economy. Iran and fentanyl not mentioning Taiwan at all. But the president, as you just played, said that the meeting went great. And now it's on to dinner time coming up pretty soon with this state banquet. Aisha Hasni live for us, 12 hours ahead in Beijing. Aisha, thank you so much. Let's bring in the director of the Heritage Foundation's Asian Studies Center, Jeff Smith. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. So, want to get your overall thoughts on what's taken place so far and your read on what's coming out both from the White House and from China.
Well, I'll tell you, so far, I like what I'm hearing. We're getting sort of standard stock diplomatic language out of the Chinese side. We have heard comments on Taiwan, but what we heard from the Chinese spokesman is the standard fair diplomatic talking points that Chinese side tends to give their American counterparts in almost any meeting. They sort of say, the U.S. staying out of the Taiwan issue is the key to stability in the relationship. I was not particularly concerned by anything that I heard there, and as far as I can tell, the U.S. side has not offered any strategic concessions on Taiwan. And so the sort of principle of first do no harm applies when we're talking about Taiwan, and here I think that's been satisfied. Hopefully we can move to sort of more constructive points of conversation, like opening up market access in China for U.S. exports.
Your read and my read are exactly the same. I'm just going to couch it in different terms. A lot of generalities, not a lot of specifics. And that leads to this. Will anything of substance, any specifics, truly be accomplished so long as both sides refuse to budge on Taiwan, Jeff?
I don't think anything positive is going to be accomplished on Taiwan. What I do think there is opportunity for is sort of tactical horse trading on things. You know, there are certain things you can do with the Chinese. You can negotiate on things like lower tariff rates, better market access, agricultural exports. If China wants to buy more U.S. soybeans, if China wants to buy more Boeing airplanes or U.S. oil and gas, I am fine with that. What I don't want to negotiate on is strategically sensitive issues like Taiwan. I don't want to be giving up strategically important U.S. products like U.S. advanced chips. And so far, we haven't seen any major concessions by the U.S. side. I hope that holds.
One of the big things to come out of this meeting that we just learned is that President Xi expressed interest in purchasing more American oil to avoid being so reliant on the Strait of Hormuz. Your reaction to that fact?
Hey, I'm fine with that. The more that China wants to be dependent on U.S. energy exports, that's okay with me. Like I said, there are things that we can horse trade with China on. There are even exports that China can do in the United States that don't necessarily affect the strategic balance of power, that don't affect American security or American prosperity. We're willing to buy more sort of textile exports from China. What we don't necessarily want is Chinese strategic investments in the U.S. Something that makes me nervous is Chinese electric vehicle exports. I think, you know, those are so heavily subsidized by the Chinese state that they risk really eviscerating the American car industry if we were to let them in en masse. So the key really when negotiating with China is to know what we can horse trade on, what is on the table, and what needs to be off the table from the start. So far, so good.
Another key, though, Jeff, and we'll leave it here after this, will China, at the end of these negotiations, at the end of these summit, actually stick to what they agreed to? Because recent history, past history, dictates that they do not typically do that. Oftentimes, a week after a summit like this, they'll renege. So what do you think?
I think you're right about that, and I think that's part of the reason we're having this summit to begin with. One of the ways we framed this engagement is as kind of a compliance checkpoint after Busan. So President Trump, President Xi met in South Korea last October. We saw this as a way to sort of check in 6 months later and see, are the Chinese upholding their commitments? I mean, part of the reason that China hawks get nervous around the time of these summits is that historically the Chinese diplomats have frankly outplayed their American counterparts. To victim, we have sort of fallen trapped to this engagement construct that China likes to create, and China has not fallen through on its commitments. And I think President Trump is right to have these checkpoints every few months and say, look, if you're not meeting your commitments, we're going to scale up sanctions or export controls or tariffs, and we need to hold to that.
Yeah, it's a great reminder. This conversation clearly went well.
Their basic attitude was it's Coney Island against everyone. And this is the area that they operated in. You can see it's a 5'9" brim, and there are two sections or sets within the 5'9" brim in Coney Island, according to the DA. The Coney sides, which are the older gang members, the FOG, which are the younger members, according to the district attorney. But Tariq, when you see that there's like also older men that are involved, yes, there's teens that are out there pulling the guns, but when you see that there's older men involved with this as well, what does that tell you? Is this a generational problem?
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Obviously, this is generational. What you're seeing here is that they're following the lead of uncles, cousins, fathers that came before them. And that's one of the problems we see consistently in public housing. We see the same families being problematic every year. And so the young people that come up and their uncles were involved, their dads were involved. It's sad that these young people, these young men didn't become involved as well. So not surprising to see that many gangs have an older set and a younger group, and the younger group usually calls themselves something different. But right now, the amount of young shooters that we're seeing is really alarming.
And then let's take a listen, Aisha, to some of the Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez. He was explaining and showing more of the map throughout all of Brooklyn. Let's take a listen.
The video is chilling. I'm going to just direct you to the left side of the screen. There's going to be two men walking. On the right side of the screen, they're going to be the four shooters. Let's play the video. Those are the two men walking. Those are the four men on the right side. They see each other. You see the two men start to backtrack. Now the shooting starts. And you see one of the shooters is now fallen to the ground. Let's watch it again from an alternative angle. There come the four shooters. They're wearing masks. All four of them have guns. We allege that two of the men are Taekwon Holmes and Tamari Kimona, as well as two other FOG Coney Island, Coney side members. As you could see during the shooting, one of the men who was shooting is in fact shot himself. He's shot by so-called friendly fire. He's shot in the back of his head. His friends see him fall to the ground and continue to run, leaving him to die.
Tariq, when you look at that video, once again, it looks like it's in a NYCHA development there.
Absolutely. And what it makes me think about is, thank God that we have the NYPD here, and how much worse this problem would be if we didn't. When those shots are going off, those cops are driving right towards danger, running towards danger. We even saw a video by the DA where right after the shooting, they grabbed one of these guys and took the gun off of him. So can you imagine what this problem would be like without a proactive department like the NYPD?
No, absolutely not. But in terms of the investigation, like how to get them, they're wearing masks. You know, everybody's dressing pretty much the same way. What do they start with typically with these? And I believe this one was also from the Gun Violence Suppression Division that we had the privilege of going out with on a number of occasions. In terms of, where do they start with the investigation? Is it the bullets? Do they look for the gun? I mean, where does it, how does it begin?
Yeah, every piece of this matters, right? So you have a homicide and you have crime scene that will come, and that's the forensic piece, and that's going to be very important, especially as things go to trial. However, you're going to have a piece of this which the video unit's going to come out. The case detectives, they're going to be tracking these guys everywhere from where that incident took place all the way back to where they came from, trying to get video of them without those masks on. Sometimes they try to change clothes, but they're not outsmarting NYPD detectives. You got the best in the world that are on you at that point. And so the video canvas will go all the way back. They'll track them all the way back to where they live. And then that's where the intelligence piece kicks in. You start to work all kind of sources in that community. What's going on? Who's involved? who is this guy right here? And you identify all the players, and then you start to grab them and do some phone work and all of these things. And when you put it all together, you make a good case.
And then Tariq, the one of the other aspects, one of the suspects in this case, Elijah Lewis, goes by his drill rap name, Lil Eli. He's a drill rapper, and then also now an alleged gang member and involved in these shootings. Let's play a little bit of his video, and then Tariq, I want to we're just going to show the actual visuals, not the sound. But once again, we're seeing this drill rap connection where they're drilling, doing real drills, which is killing, and then talking about it, and even making reference to putting people in a box in other language about taking out, taking out the ops and that type of thing. Do police monitor these videos closely?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we, at one point, we put a lot more younger detectives into the detective squad, because you have to be looking at YouTube. You have to be listening and understanding what you're listening to. A lot of these young people, when I was a sergeant, we were looking at GS9, and same thing, Bobby Smurda and his guys talking about some of the crimes they have committed. This is cultural. They think this stuff is funny, going back and forth against each other. They're dead serious about it, but they're incriminating themselves on YouTube, on social media. We see countless incidents. It's just incriminating, and you see how laissez-faire they are about it. But this is serious because young people are losing their lives over these videos.
And I think the other thing that's hard for us to understand, it was just very difficult for me the first time that I heard it, is that the shootings aren't really over anything. It's not like they're trying to gain territory to sell drugs, or it's just over beefs, over you're from here, you're from there. These shootings in this particular case, it looks like they just wanted to shoot at whoever they got. Is that something new?
Look, I have a 15-year school for the summer, and after this press conference, it just reminds me to not let him go visit friends in some of these neighborhoods.
Right.
I hate to think like that, but he's a young black kid, and being just in one of these neighborhoods, if you're wearing jeans and maybe a sweatshirt, you can just be associated with being part of a gang, and somebody will shoot at you. That 16-year-old, the DA said, had nothing to do with gangs. And they walked into that neighborhood, and they just believed that because he was dressed a certain way, he may have been a part of Folk Nation, and they shot him. And so as a black father with a teenage son, I have to listen, observe, and then react. And my reaction is, I am not going to let my son walk around some of these neighborhoods without me, especially during the summer. It just puts me even in fear. And I'm a former police officer in New York City. So can you imagine how people feel who live in these communities?
No, and you worked for many years in a lot of the toughest the toughest precincts. But let me ask you about something that we're hearing more about, this grooming the young guys. We see in this case the older uncles, fathers, older brothers, whatever, and then another set that's the younger, the ones that are starting as teens. How do they get them involved in this? Is this just the kind of thing like, well, my dad was a lawyer, so I'm going to be a lawyer, or my dad was a cop, I'm going to be a cop? Is it that type of thing, or is there something more insidious that happens in these communities?
Yeah, it didn't used to be that way, but there's a lot of pressure on these young men to either be down or get laid down. And it's that simple. It's hard for them to walk in and out of these neighborhoods and be safe without them being a part of what's going on. You're not going to have a rite of passage like I did. I grew up in a very tough neighborhood on Lenox Avenue, but I had a rite of passage because I was a basketball player.
Right.
I didn't want to be in gangs, but the older dudes understood that. So I had a rite of passage to go in different neighborhoods to play ball. These kids, what they're doing is basically saying, you live here, you're either down with us or you're not. You're not going to have protection. But you're also not going to have just protection from rivals. You're not going to have protection from us. And so that puts in a tremendous amount of stress and strain on these young people, live with the risk of something happening to them right in the developments the nitro developments that they live in. And so the older guys there, When you have young people who can go out and do shootings and carry on sort of the legacy and severe consequences as being, above the age of 18 or 21, of course they're going to recruit them to go do shootings and encourage them to go do shootings. They're 15. They believe that they won't receive the same amount of time in jail and things like that, and the impact. And if you do 10 years, 15 years, you're still only in your 30s when you get out.
Right.
That's the way these guys look at it. And as crazy as that sounds, that's a reality. That's a reality.
And then do you think that this will be a deterrent to others, or another way that some of them look, well, I got clout now because I'm part of this big case?
Well, I think it's not a deterrent at all. I think the DA is right. You are saving lives by taking some of these guys off the street. You are. But again, this is not a problem that you can police your way out of. This gang problem is really something that's going to be around for decades, unless we come up with a cohesive plan that's all inclusive, getting people out of this. Because the arrests and the takedowns come after the violence has already happened. We already have victims by that point. And yes, it helps to reduce it, but they're going to retool and they're going to be shooting in these neighborhoods again in a few months. And so, and now it'll pop up somewhere else. So, this is just one of those things where it's sad, but it's also encouraging, because you look at the work that the courageous work that the cops are out there doing, and it just makes you proud of your cops, the DA's office. But it is sad that that this is not the end. There are more coming to replace the ones that got taken off the street this week.
Absolutely. Well, Tariq Shepard, former NYPD Deputy Commissioner and co-founder of Harlem Ridge Advisors, thank you so much for being with us and breaking this all down for us. We appreciate it. And thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. And we're going to continue to follow this. The arrest, just to sum up real quick, what Tariq was talking about, and what we are focusing on, a major takedown announced today by Brooklyn DA Eric Gonzalez and NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch and the Gun Violence Suppression Division of the NYPD, a 1.5-year investigation into Coney Island gangs operating right up to the amusement park there, if you can believe it, and multi-generational as well. Also, the NYCHA connection is there. And more than 182 bullets. That's what they recovered from a series of these shootings. So we're going to be following this closely. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to get a take on the weather, and also it erupted on a good day this morning with Rosanna Scotto and a very famous chef about whether or not dogs should be allowed in restaurants. We're going to find out what Miss Audrey has to say.
All right, let's go to the East. We got some situations going on in the playoffs. What a game last night. The Cavaliers beat the Pistons in overtime to give Cleveland now the 3-2 series lead and a chance to close it out on Friday at home. The Pistons led by 9 with 3 minutes to go, but the Cavs came back, went on a 13-0 run that bled into overtime. Donovan Mitchell had 21, but James Harden had 30. The Cavs won their first road game in these playoffs. However, the Pistons did seem to feel a little slighted after the conclusion of the game. Just before the end of regulation, both Jarrett Allen and Asar Thompson were going for the ball. It looked as though Allen tripped Thompson. No foul was called. Ball went out of bounds, which sent the game into overtime. Here's JB Bickerstaff on the no call at the end of regulation.
Did they give you a reason why there was no foul call on Jarrett Allen on that trip?
He fouled Asar. It's that. I mean, clear. He trips him when he's going for a loose ball. In the game situation, that's tough.
From where I sat, it also looked like a foul. I don't know that it would have determined the outcome of the game, but nonetheless, do you think Detroit was robbed by a no foul call perk?
Hell no. Hell no. I'm glad Tony Brothers didn't call the foul. Nobody want to see the game end on a call like that. Let the players decide the game, not Tony Brothers. And if JB is going to be complaining about anything, he need to be complaining about the lack of production that he's getting from his bigs, that he's not getting from his bigs when it comes to Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. I don't want to hear that. You're at home. You at home. The worst case scenario, you went into overtime. You should have enough energy. You should have enough pride to finish that game. I'm glad they didn't call that because I didn't want to see that game end in that matter.
Well, listen, I'm not. I will say this to you. Let me correct myself. I don't want to see the game end like that either. But we're not going to get on JB about it like he did something wrong by pointing that out. It was clearly a foul. He was tripped, Big Perk. And it was the end of regulation, and Asur Thompson could have went to the free throw line and won the game. You certainly don't want to win the game on that play, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. The fact of the matter is it did happen. That was a foul. It should have been called, and as a result, Detroit would have been in a position to win the game. Now, nobody's making excuses for Detroit. You were up 15 points in the first half. You were up 9 with 3 minutes left.
Because you want.
I have a question.
Wait.
Brian,
wait.
do you believe the Democrats can win?
You think it's racist to have
The Supreme
representation?
Court just desegregated
you
the
think
South.
having one
Democrats
district
in the South were
in South
segregating
Carolina.
the South by having race-based congressional districts, which the Supreme Court just ruled against. That's what just happened. Democrats
when they
apparently
crack
can't
these
win
districts,
elections
when
unless they draw districts based on race. Whether they can't win elections because people are fleeing blue states for red states, and they can't win elections because in the census they are counting illegal aliens as part of congressional districts, which Democrats are opposed to taking. Opposed to taking out of that because they need them for congressional representation.
So when they
crack
these districts, and black voters in South Carolina,
they can still
in
vote
Tennessee,
wherever they want. You just don't draw the lines based on race, which is racist. They're desegregating the South.
You're being purposefully obtuse, and your viewers can see that.
You're being purposely
because
obtuse.
they know exactly what it means when you crack a district from a jurisdiction where there are overwhelmingly black or brown voters, and now all of a sudden those districts are cracked into 3 other districts so that their voting power is diluted. This is exactly the impetus.
I know that George Wallace
this is
and
exactly
Joe Biden
the
were
impetus.
against
This was
desegregation
exactly
and
the
integration,
impetus for the
but
Voting
the
Rights Act of
Republicans are not for that,
1965.
and neither is the
This
Supreme
was
Court.
exactly the impetus for the
Brian,
Voting Rights Act of
great to see you.
1965.
Brian Tyler Cohen, thank you. Talk to you soon.
Wow. You know what I would have asked this guy? I would have asked him, I said, so you're for race-based districts, right? That's what you're for, right? You're for segregation. You're for segregating people in congressional maps based off race. That's what you're for. That's what you're for. And depending on his answer, I probably would have followed up and said, okay, so you're totally fine with drawing congressional maps based off the white vote, right? Where we're drawing districts, white districts, right, that vote Republican. You're totally cool with that, because understand what these people are boohoo whining crying about. Again, there's no principle behind it, right? It's not logically consistent. They're literally accusing Ron DeSantis out in Florida of drawing maps in order to benefit white voters, right? They're accusing Ron DeSantis of isolating so-called people of color in order to limit Democrat districts. So they don't like that. They don't like isolating so-called voters of color in states where it does not benefit Democrats, right? Where it limits Democrat representation. However, in states like Louisiana, where Democrats have an advantage when you isolate so-called people of color, black voters, right, into multiple districts, they support that, right? They're like, no, you need to racially gerrymander in states where Democrats benefit from it. But if Democrats don't benefit from it, then no, you shouldn't be allowed to do that, right? They can't reconcile being upset about what Florida is doing and being upset about what Louisiana is doing at the same time, because their argument is nonsensical. It's not based off of any type of real principle. It's just simply based off, we only believe what's right is whatever that helps Democrats, right? That's it. Whatever helps Democrats get more power, that's all they believe in.